Well, good morning to you all, good morning. It is Sunday, the 9th of February 2020. Just after 8 o'clock, the sun is beginning to peep over the buildings over there. I guess that must be the east, don't you? Yeah. And it's Sunday. So on a Sunday, what happens? Well, you know, we get up and we look at the sand pile, and I don't know whether it's a cat or what it is, but something enjoys dancing around on my sand pile overnight. Sand pile overnight. Yeah, I can see the attraction in that. And some of you probably want to know whether trains run on Sundays. Well, the answer is yes, they do. They do. But of course, it's a very limited service, because the only people on this train, apart from the driver and the conductor, are the people that live near the station that are going 2 stops up the line to church. Right, that's it. They can all go and do that sort of thing. Yeah, in case you're wondering, it's not connected to anything. Yeah. Yes, there's one of the commandments, you know. Something about don't tempt God or something, isn't there? But very shortly we'll jump in the Skoda. Today the service is a little bit further away than the church here in the town. We've got to go across to Polnay, which is very pleasant. Well, it's Sunday, and what happens on railways on a Sunday? The passenger trains are all parked up, going nowhere, and the old diesels have been pulled out to work engineering trains, and they've taken their engineering trains to the work site, and then they've run off to a siding near to a fish and chip shop so they can sit and contemplate what they're going to spend their Sunday overtime on. Yes, now, serious stuff. In another forum, we've had a fair amount of conversation about old equipment like this. Now, I don't know when Triang were producing and selling RP14s. Let me just say that this is the model that was in use before I got my first train set. I had one with a more recent type of controller. So this is, what is it? Someone's going to correct me on this. It's 60 years old. And some people suggest that plugging it into the wall and sticking 240 or 230 volts 50 cycle AC into it may not be the wisest thing ever. I do tend to agree. It's got a metal case on it. It's got wire that yeah, it seems to be holding its own. The insulation doesn't seem to have fouled on the outside, but of course it is a very old code. You know, the colours are not modern colour codes. Now, part of that discussion, one friend said that he'd seen one of these being opened up by a qualified electrician who threw his hands in the air in horror and said, whatever you do, don't use them. I know there are other people who say, well, you know, give it a go. Safety, you know, you only get one chance at not being killed. I've managed to not be killed doing an awful lot of strange and wonderful things, but it would be rather embarrassing to be killed playing with me toy trains. So, what I'm about to do is I'm going to go and dig up my other one. For security reasons, I'm not going to take the camera with me. I don't want you seeing where all of my truly valuable stuff is hidden. But we'll go and find another one, then we'll see how we get these rivets out and see if we can open the box up and have a look inside. Well, sometimes you have to laugh, don't you? This packet of drills came to me from someone's estate, and they're packed in this wonderful sort of plastic stuff that's a bit of a swine to cut, and I just looked round quickly for something to cut it with and picked up a pair of tin snips and nipped me fingers, nipped me thumb in there. Oh well, that's the first injury of the month actually. Yeah, let's get these open and get a drill out. Well, this is the internal workings of that transformer controller. As you can see, it's got a transformer that takes 240 volt 50 cycle AC into the transformer, which is riveted to the metal box. This, of course, is the backside of the pot rheostat. That's a rather interesting looking printed circuit board. Now, what we have here is two wires. Trying to see what we've actually got. Two wires to the transformer, and the earth wire very firmly earths the whole gizmo. Now, the wires are actually in fairly okay condition. They're securely soldered to the terminals, but look how close they are to that metal box. Yeah, okay. I think with old equipment like this, the big issue is always going to be the state of the wire. Old wiring tends to become brittle. Now, what happens this side is probably not too much of a problem, because this is now knocked down to a fairly safe voltage. You know, this is only, I say only, it's supposedly only 12 volt. But of course this side is full mains voltage, and you know, some people are going to say 230, some people will say 240 volts AC, and it is very, very close to the metal box. The other thing with this wire, let me find the end of it. This wire is not exactly as thick as we would normally use. You know, if you look at the thickness of the insulation on it, that's not as thick as we would normally use on trailing leads for equipment. You know, if you sort of take a notice of how thick the insulation is there, that's not very. And then if we look for contrast, you know, that's a more modern 240 volt lead. So, okay, do I judge it to be actually dangerous? Well, danger and safety are always sort of subjective. I am told that a qualified and certified electrician was horrified by that. I must say, I'm not too impressed with it. For me, the big issue is the age and brittleness of the insulation. But there we are, that's what they look like on the inside. Will I take advice? I'm not normally famous for taking advice, but yeah, I shall take advice on this one. Yes, I will be treating myself to a nice new controller at some stage. Am I going to use this every week and let children play with it? Most certainly not. What would happen if that wire touched that case? Because of the mains wiring that I'm plugged into, if that did short across to this case, for various reasons, various other reasons in this property, I am very, very confident that the RCD breakers on my mains supply would do the necessary and would disconnect power very, very quickly. Part of the joy of working in a building like this is some of the wiring was done. It was contracted to Laurel and Hardy, who subcontracted it to Michael Mouse. And so far I have had one or two little incidents where power has been applied to things and there's been a sharp crack as my RCDs trip in. So yeah, not going to be using this one. I sacrificed this to see what was inside it. Not going to be using that one, even though that is a much more modern piece of equipment. You know, I just look at the state of it. That's been subjected to the sort of conditions electrical kit doesn't like. Now this, in so many ways, is a much safer setup. It came with a train set, and what we've got is a standard sort of gizmo-y sort of transformer that plugs into the wall, and the voltage that wanders about on leads is of course 16 or less volts. So the bit that you have in your hand is plastic. Plastic is a very good non-conductor, but in any event, if something goes wrong with this box, you're only going to get the benefit of 16 volts maximum. So that has to be a better way of doing it. Incidentally, I'm not going to use this one either because there's something grievously wrong. It's obviously at some time in its life been dropped and broken, so that piece of equipment is not going to survive very much longer.